The experimental side of the Rolling Stones is alive and well here on Beggars Banquet, on an album that I think is kind of overshadowed by a lot of their other iconic releases. But make no mistake, Beggars Banquet is a turning point for the band. It marks the first of the golden run with producer Jimmy Miller on board, and also it has two of the Stones' most enduring tracks of their entire catalog. Over the years, the album has consistently made it on top albums lists, like Pitchfork magazine ranking at 35 on their 200 best albums of the 1960s. Released in December of 1968, Beggars Banquet was a major reset for the Rolling Stones. After the psychedelic experiment of Their Satanic Majesty's request, the band stripped things back, reconnecting with their blues roots. But this album also marked a first, the Stones beginning to weave country music into their sound in a serious way. Beggars Banquet also stretches outward and reflects the band's growing fascination with world music. What makes Beggars Banquet so different, not only from other Stones albums, but from other albums of the time, was that we have here an album that is predominantly driven by the acoustic guitar. I mean, take a look at the song Street Fighting Man, which kicks off side 2 of this album. It's an absolute monster track. It's one of the Stones' biggest tracks ever. It's a legendary story that Keith has talked about in the past.
There's not an electric guitar on that one. It's all overloaded acoustics. I realized that I could use the cassette machine basically as a pickup. And I play an acoustic guitar through it and like slam it through so loud that it was totally overloaded.
It's a 1967 Norelco, the same one that you would carry around with you. Found it. Again, Mike?
That's as much as you're going to get. See what comes out. Basically, you have an electric guitar, but with the feel of an acoustic. That's as much as you're going to get.
I mean, for such a huge song like Street Fighting Man, you would never guess that these were acoustic guitars. But it goes to show that the power that they bring to the instruments is what makes up for it, not the electricity of electric guitars. There's a great video here on YouTube of this wonderful team breaking down the song Street Fighting Man and taking a look at the process of how they recorded this song, from the acoustic guitar into the small tape recorder to Charlie playing this song on a tiny practice drum set. It's a great video, highly recommended. That it gives a great insight on the Stones' experimental spirit and how this track was really one of the centerpieces of Beggars Banquet. The rest of the album also features a lot of acoustic guitars, like in songs like No Expectations, Salt of the Earth, Prodigal Son, and Factory Girl. But with that said, Stray Cat Blues is the outlier of the album, since it is the more electric moment in an album that's predominantly acoustic. This song is a massive song in more ways than one, and too big to unpack here. But I will say that this song, in a way, kind of previews audiences into what's coming on the next album, on Let It Bleed. A poignant moment on the album is, of course, the song No Expectations, which sort of is a swan song performance for Brian Jones. It was an especially tough time for the band. Jones was essentially fading from the group and not anymore a vibrant contributing member of the band, but he rallied on this track and delivered one of his greatest moments with the Stones. You could easily say that the Stones went all out on experimentation on the previous album, Their Satanic Majesty's Request. But I would say that the Stones continued on that sense of experimentation in a smaller but very effective way here on Beggars Banquet. Take the song Factory Girl, for example. You strip away the rhythm section of the track and you have a very traditional, straightforward folk song. Instead of keeping with the folk genre and using more folk-appropriate instruments for the rhythm track, they go the completely other direction and instead use congas and the tablas, which are an instrument native to India. That mashup of a pseudo Celtic Appalachian folk song on top, resting on a South Asian, influenced tabla driven rhythm with congas. It is completely an international fusion happening there. It's this cross-cultural mashup that most bands wouldn't even think of doing or even executing as well as the Stones do here. But it's totally on brand for the Stones and totally consistent with their musical instincts.
Waiting for a girl who's got curls in her hair. Waiting for a girl, she's no money anywhere. Back to the girl. Waiting for a girl and her knees much too fat. Waiting
For me, the secret weapon on the team here on Beggars Banquet is the great Nicky Hopkins. Hopkins absolutely shines throughout the entire album, and especially on songs like the opening track, Sympathy for the Devil. How much more can be said about Sympathy for the Devil that hasn't been said already? There has been countless fantastic pieces done on this song, but it does represent one of the best collaborations between Mick and Keith and really the rest of the band. Originally written by Mick as a Bob Dylan-style acoustic folk tune, the song quickly transformed once Keith and the band stepped in. What began as a straightforward folk rock track evolved into something far more unique, driven by the Stones' obsession with rhythm. Here again, the Stones are fusing together sounds that you wouldn't expect. Much like what they did on Factory Girl, here you have a kind of a folk rock, lyric-driven song on top, and underneath you have a samba-driven rhythm that gives shades of West Africa and Brazilian music. The result is this kind of genre-bending masterpiece. This continues the Stones' tradition for their love of world music. We've seen it in the material before this, in songs like Paint It Black or Mother's Little Helper. You get shades of these otherworldly exotic sounds creeping into their pop and rock and blues structure. But here on Sympathy for the Devil, the bridge is finally complete. They finally bridge the gap between themselves and world music, allowing this sound to come in and bake into their DNA. The congas again are played by the fantastic percussionist Rocky Dijon, and the sheker instrument played by Bill Wyman. It's an exotic, tribal, spooky sound that brought the Stones in a different universe altogether. It sounded nothing like much of pop music during that time, and it stands today as one of the Stones' biggest songs. If you want to see the evolution of the Stones recording Sympathy for the Devil, you have to go watch the documentary Sympathy for the Devil, which was originally called 1-to-1. It's as a whole a very the documentary kind of tests your patience because it's also this very artsy highbrow art piece that's kind of blended in with this footage of the Stones in the studio.
And there is only one way to be an intellectual revolutionary, and that is to give up being an intellectual.
Mind you, be aware of that coming in, but it is worth it because you see the Stones building this song from the ground up, a fly in the wall experience, so definitely go check that out. And of course, controversy follows the Stones everywhere. There was even a battle between them and the record company over the album cover for Beggars Banquet. When the band submitted the album to Decca Records, the label rejected the original artwork, which depicted a grimy graffiti-covered bathroom wall. Decca found it offensive, prompting Mick to point out the hypocrisy, especially when Tom Jones was allowed to release his album, Atomic Tom Jones, featuring a mushroom cloud on the front cover. In the end, the Stones were forced to replace the cover with a plain white design featuring the album in a very simple script. Fortunately, the original artwork was later restored on later CD reissues. If you haven't listened to Beggars Banquet recently, it's worth revisiting with fresh ears. It's an album that finds the Stones planting their feet even deeper in their musical roots with blues and country, but also stretching out to new areas and them scratching their itch on their love for world music. It's also a clear transitional moment for the band, especially with the very sad situation of Brian Jones fading away from the band. So Beggars Banquet sort of captures the Stones continuing to evolve. And that's what's always been fascinating about the band, is that you're always seeing them metamorphosized just a little bit on every album. They're always adjusting and recalibrating. It's a raw and daring reset for the band that continues to be not only a cornerstone in the Stones catalog, but a must-have in any serious music collection. What are your favorite tracks? Is there one that you put on constantly when you put Beggars Banquet on? Where do you fit this album on the big four of the Jimmy Miller albums? Put it all in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Hangfire.